Hey, friends. In today's episode, you're in for an incredible story of determination as my good friend and celebrity fashion designer, Cheyenne, tells the story of how she fought her way to her dreams. Hear about how she went from working at Chipotle to being featured on the Amazon Prime hit series Making the Cut, showing her collection at New York Fashion Week, and how she leveraged PR showrooms to get her brand on celebrities. Get ready to be inspired. Now let's get into the episode. Ciara, welcome to the podcast. It's been a long time coming. People don't know how hard it was to get this together, but I'm so glad that you're finally here.
Thank you for having me, Make Good Fashion. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes. Oh my gosh. We have a lot of history in this business together. We were once office mates, so it's so fun to see it come full circle and just to get to share your story with everyone. So, I want to start because I'm obsessed with your story. I feel like you are so inspiring and you just have a great story about how you kind of ended up here. And you're one person that I know that truly loves fashion. You live and breathe fashion. So tell us about your journey and how you got here and what it took to get to where you are now as the founder of Ciara Cheyenne.
I always struggle answering this question because it's just so many different compartments to my story. So, when I was younger, I would say like 5, 6, I started sketching dresses. And then as I got older, I think I started to develop my personal style. I just remember my mom always picking out my clothes, and I never agreed with the outfits, and I was like, this is not it. And then as I got older, I thought I wanted to be a fashion stylist. So I always fell in love with styling, and I was obsessed with watching Rachel Zoe and other stylists like that. And then when I got in high school, I actually started my first clothing brand. It was called W4. And that's kind of how I got my start into, creating clothing, I guess you can say. And when I was a senior in high school, I remember asking my mom, could she take me to Woodbury University? They had this fashion program, and at that time, I also took my first elective, which was fashion design. So that's how I got my little intro into fashion. And I can remember my professor, I actually didn't get along with her in high school for my elective fashion design course. She used to tell me basically I wasn't creative, but I didn't let that stop me. I was like, I know that I'm creative. I love fashion and I'm going to move forward. And this is something that I've actually never shared with anyone. So then when I was getting ready to graduate from high school, I told my mom I wanted to go to FITM fashion school.
Mhm.
And so I remember I was like, hey, I set up a meeting with the counselor,
Yeah.
and the parent has to come. So I remember getting to the meeting, and my mom pulls this stack of papers out her purse, and I'm like, what is that? And she's like, well, I did research, and statistically proving 68% of people only get an AA out of this school and they never progress. And
Dang,
I'm
your
like,
mom did her research.
where did she get this information from? So my mom did a whole Google search and print out stats of people attending FITM, and who actually makes 100,000 a year, or who actually gets a real job, or she pulls out this stapled stat. And so I was so distraught after that. I was like, you know what? I don't even want to go to fashion school anymore. Forget it.
Mm.
And so she was like, I need you to really think about it. I want you to go to a 4-year university. And so I started applying for HBCUs. I got accepted into a few HBCUs, like Hampton University and others. And Tuskegee was one of the schools I applied to and got the most money. I got a scholarship to go to Tuskegee. And so I ended up going to Tuskegee. And my mom was like, well, I think you should major in business. So, of course, I listened to my mom. I majored in business. And when I started out, I was a business management major. I changed my major to sales and marketing. And I was like, it seems like people who major in sales and marketing, they, have more of a range. They have more of a range or a variety of options of career and jobs. And then, I always wanted to own my own business. So I was like, if I major in sales and marketing, I'll learn like the basic principles of how to sell a product, how to market a product. And I'll say that that was like one of the best decisions I've made in my life is
Mm.
going to business school. And then I remember I couldn't afford tuition one semester. So I actually ended up dropping out of school. I moved back to LA and I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And so I got a job at Ross. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to save as much money as I can so that, I can figure out what my next step is. And that's when I had found out about Otis University College of Art and Design. They offered a fashion program and I didn't have the money to attend to get credit. So I took classes for no credit. And a lot of people don't know that, but you can take a lot of like courses for no credit and they're like significantly cheaper. So I think I
Mm.
pay like maybe like $350, $400 per course. And I still learn like the basic principles of fashion design. And then the second course that I took was like a beginner sewing class.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say maybe 6 months later, after I finished those courses and I worked at Ross for a few months, I was freaking depressed. I was like, Ross is not it. Like, I have to figure something out. So I ended up saving money and figuring out a financial solution. I went back to Tuskegee,
Mm-hmm.
enrolled back in school, and I got back on the path to graduate. So post graduation, I was looking for jobs in the fashion industry
Mm-hmm.
and I went through a creative agency and they were like, hey, Amazon's looking for, assistant product stylist. And that's where I met you, Jasmine.
Yes, we both were styling at
um,
Amazon.
yeah, we both were styling at Amazon. Oh my God, Jasmine, do you remember the days? It was like slow days. We didn't have a lot of work and like we would play like Shark Tank.
Yes, we
We
would
played
pitch
Shark
our
Tank at the time.
businesses. We would be like thinking of having these business meetings at work, trying to figure out how we were going to launch these lines and all of that. So yes, I definitely remember, and those were some fun times.
Yeah, we talked about fashion, business, faith. We would be listening to like podcasts at
Yeah,
work. Like we would be
definitely
like,
were
"Oh, did
not
you
doing
hear
what
this
we were
one?"
supposed to be doing. We were plotting
Girl,
to launch
we
our
were plotting.
businesses.
So in 2017, I decided to take a flight with a friend who was also a fashion designer, menswear designer, and he told me about his manufacturing facility. So I was like, "Hey, yeah, like I'll go to New York with you. Like I would love to like really take this thing to the next level. I really want to be a designer." And I remember I had like collections of designs like in my sketchbook, and I was like, "I
Mm.
really want to bring these collections to life." So I took a flight to New York with him. I met his manufacturers and I remember like working on 3 to 4 pieces in New York, like in a weekend. And I was like, we got to
Mm.
get this done, guys. We got to get this done. So I'm like running around New York looking for trims. I'm looking for drawstring. I'm looking for mesh. I'm looking for fusing. Like I'm just around the city, like looking for all types of things. I'm like, I got to get these samples done. Like they got to get done. And they're like, excuse me, ma'am, but it's going to take a little time. It's not going to get done in 3 days. So we'll just ship it to you when it's done. So that
Yeah.
ended up happening. I got back to LA. I got the samples. They looked great. And I was like, oh, we're in business. We're in business. And so I realized, I was like, hey, but I don't really have to take a flight to New York. Like it's a little bit far. And I thought the costing was a little bit high. So
Hmm.
I started going downtown in LA and walking around, knocking on doors and just asking people like, hey, like, do you know anybody over here that does cutting? Do you know anybody over here that can like sew these dresses? And so little do you know, like that old school method of like walk and knock on doors really works because people will
Yeah.
definitely direct you to the right people. Like there's just such a wealth of knowledge and amount of resources in the fashion district that people sleep on, I think. And you have to be like confident enough and like have faith to just step out on faith and just like do things sometimes. Like when you're trying to
Yeah.
figure things out, it's like you can't sit around and just like wait for people to come to you. You have to go to people and like just figure it out.
Yeah.
And so at that time, like that was the mentality that I had. So I left Amazon and then I started working at Chipotle. Very random. Don't ask me why. I don't really know. But I was looking for a fashion job, but I just wasn't getting hired. So, when you have bills due, like you just have to do what you have to do. So I was working at Chipotle And then I finally was like, no, I'm going to figure out how to get a job in the industry. So I went back to that old knock on the door system. Like I would print out my resume, look up fashion jobs in my area. I would go and be like, hey, I need a job in design. Like I want to be a designer. Here's my resume. Can you hire me? So many people said no. And I was like, praying, God, please help me here. Like I just know somebody's going to hire me. And I ended up going on an interview at this one job. And I remember like praying before I went in. And I was like, hey, God, like, I really need you, Jesus, to like walk in this door with me and like sit at the table next to me. And after that interview, I was like, the interview was very short. And I was like, oh my God, like, did they make up their mind already? It's probably a no. And then she came back in and she was like, all right, we're going to give you a shot.
Wow.
And so she hired me to be basically a fashion design assistant and production coordinator. So I remember on my first day, like walking into, which technically is like a factory, a sample room, like a sample room floor. And like you have like maybe 100 sewers and like cutters and like everyone's like on the floor. And so I remember like walking above it and like looking down over what we call the runway and seeing all the sewers, and I started crying like on my first day of work. Like I started crying and I was like, oh my God, like my dreams are happening. Like I'm in here. So I was at that company for about 2.5 years. They had just promoted me to junior associate designer. I probably was in that position maybe a couple months, and then I got laid off because COVID had hit in 2020. And then I was like, this is the time to take what I'm doing as a hobby and turn it into a viable business. And so when I got laid off, that's when I made the transition from W4 Studios to Ciara Cheyenne. I think I was going through a season of like a lot of change and really like discovering myself as a woman. And I really wanted to create something that represented me as, a woman, as a creative, and share that with the world. And so it was a little bit scary for me, to be honest. I was always told that when you attach your name to a business, you have to do everything right. Because if anything goes wrong, like that's your legacy, like
Yeah.
that's your name. You know what I mean? If you stamp your business with your name, like you can't go bankrupt. You can't do this. You can't do that. And so I think for a long time I was like really scared, and I was like, should I name my business my name? You know? And then I woke up one morning and I was just like, I think I should name my business my name. Like I am the representation of my creativity and my designs. So why not put my identity into what I'm building? And then so that's when that shift I made that shift into creating my business into Ciara Cheyenne.
Wow, I love that story so much. And thank God that you did name it after your namesake, because you've been able to do so much under that name and you've been featured on so many things. You are not only a designer to the stars, but you're a star in your own right, because you've been on Tamron Hall show, you were on Amazon Prime series Making the Cut, and I want to hear more about that. So how did you get on Making the Cut, and what was that experience like? Coming from this, fighting to get into the fashion industry, starting your line, and now you are on TV as a designer on the show on Amazon Prime. What was that like?
Yeah. So when I was working at Democracy, one of my coworkers, she actually had sent the audition link to me one day. And she was like, hey, I think you should apply for this show. Like my friend is one of the casting directors. And I didn't really like think too much into it, and I had applied for Project Runway before I made it past like round one, and then I got cut. So when I heard about Making the Cut, I was like, oh, it's like the same type of show. And, I wasn't like, I didn't feel like I was ready for it. So I never applied. Fast forward to the next year, we're in COVID. And I think I was on the phone with you, Jazz. And I think you were like, hey, have you seen this show, Making the Cut? And I was like, that's so crazy you asked me that, because I just saw it. Like, because I think everybody was like in the house during COVID, and like we were just like watching like Hulu and Netflix and Amazon Prime, and like, we didn't have nothing to do. So we were watching TV. And to
Yeah.
be honest, I'm not a big TV person. Like I don't watch much TV. So I remember you like asking me about that. And I was like, that's crazy. I just saw the show. And you were like, it's so good. You got to watch this episode. And I was like, I think I had only watched the first episode. And then
Mm-hmm.
when you told me that, I remember like going back and I like binge watched the whole first season. And I was like,
Mm.
it's so
Yeah.
good. And then we started talking about like what we would do differently. And we were like, oh my gosh, like what if we were on the show? And then we were like, yeah, but it would be cool if we were both on the show. And then we pretended like we weren't friends and they had no idea.
I
Remember?
remember that. Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
Yeah. And so like I think fast forward second season, then I ended up watching the second season. So you basically had said to me one day, I think this is so at this time we were sharing an office space,
Yes,
right? We were
me and
sharing
Ciara
yeah,
were
we were sharing an
office
office
mates.
space.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we were office mates. So Jasmine had just moved into a new office and she brought me along and she was like, hey, Ciara, like, would you like to share a space? And I was like, oh my God, this is like perfect timing. Like, I really think I need to be like in an office where I can be productive and have my own workspace. And it just like worked out so good. Like,
Yeah.
people know like working from home is like one thing. And then like having an office space, like, I just feel like the productivity is just so much higher. And then also you have a location that's like pretty neutral for like your clients to come or like models to
Yeah.
do fittings. You can use the space for like shooting and like doing all these things. So like it's definitely an advantage to have an office space. So I thank you for that, Jasmine. Thank you for providing that space
What?
for me.
Stop it. Anyway.
So
Continue
yeah,
the
at
story.
this time, me and Jasmine were office mates, and I think you had said to me, you were like, "Hey, like this lady reached out to me and told me to apply for making the cut." And I was like, you should do it. You should do it. And then you were like, oh, but I need to like brush up on my sewing skills. And I was just
Yes.
like, yeah, but the show is pretty cool because they have seamstress on site. And so I was like, yeah, brush up on them, but still apply. And then I think I later had looked at the link and you were like, you told me I should apply too.
Can I tell
And
you the
I think I
background
went,
story to
yes, please
that?
do, please do.
Yeah. Okay. So,
Yes.
because I think this is this story's, I love this story. But, anyways, yes, the casting director had reached out to me on Instagram and she's like, you'd be great for this. You should apply for making the cut. Immediately, I'm like, oh, heck no. Like you said, I don't have sewing skills. Like, everybody knows when you start a business, you are not actually doing the sewing, right? We contract sewers, we have manufacturers, all of that. And so to me, I was thinking this is a great opportunity, right? Like I can get my name out there, get my brand out there, but I don't feel comfortable and I felt weird. And I was thinking, like, honestly, like, I don't know if I'm right for this. And I was praying about it one day in the car and I felt God tell me, like, I know not everyone is a person of faith, but I know that, like, God can speak to you and all this stuff. And yeah, I just felt like God was telling me, like, this is for Ciara, right? Like, this is Ciara's opportunity. And
Yeah, you
honestly,
never told me that.
I thought I
You
did.
ne-
I don't know.
no,
Maybe it was one of our
you
other
never.
friends because I was working it out in my head. Because honestly, I was like, but should I give this up? Like, I don't know. Like, I mean, we can both apply, but I felt like God tell me, like, this is not for you. This is for Ciara. So, anyways, I texted you and I'm like, Ciara, have you applied to making the cut yet? And I think you were saying like something like the link wasn't working or your computer wasn't working at the time or
The
something.
deadline.
The
It was the
deadline.
deadline. It had closed because when I clicked the
Okay.
link, it was like application closed.
Okay. So I think the casting director had sent me another type of link that was open. So then that's what I sent to you because I was like, okay, I have peace with this. This is not for me. But I applied anyway because you told me like we should both try to apply and get on the show together. So I did apply, but I did not get in. So it confirmed that the word that I got was true. So that's a little
Yeah,
background story from my end.
yeah, and I remember going back and forth with you. I was like, "No, Jasmine, the application is closed." And you were like, "No, it's not. It's open." And I was like, "Jasmine, I just clicked it. Like it said it's over." And you were
That
like,
is
"No, it's
so
not."
funny.
And so then you sent me the link, and then I clicked it, and I was like, "Oh shoot, it's open."
Yeah. Yeah.
But what's crazy, Jasmine, is that I can't even tell you how many times I applied through that link. Like, so I remember the day, like I went home. It's first of all, it took me like 3 hours to like sit because we had to create a video submission. So it
Mm-hmm.
took me like 3 hours just to create the video. And then I was submitting it and it wasn't going through. Like it just kept saying like like it wouldn't upload. And so every time it did that, I would have to start over. So I kept re-recording the video and trying to submit it, and it wouldn't go through. And so I was like, okay, I give up, whatever. So then I get to our friend's Terrence's house, and then when I get there, I try again. I'm like, okay, let me try here. So I'm trying to do the video. I'm resubmitting. It keeps saying it's not able to process. So I remember getting so frustrated, like almost crying. And I was like,
Mm.
okay, it's just not meant to be. And he was like, just relax, take a breather, and try again. He was like, go to your office and try. So I went to my office and I was like checking the Wi-Fi. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna try this one more
Oh
time.
my God.
So I went to the office. I remember it was late at night too. And so I was just like, this is the last time I'm gonna submit this. So I recorded the video over again and I submitted it and it went through. And I was like, I just needed to be patient. And so I remember like at that time I was working at a factory and I was doing production management. And I remember like sitting at my desk, like at work, and an email had came through, and I was like in a meeting, and I was like looking at the email, and I was like, oh my gosh, they emailed me back. And then so like my supervisor's like, what's going on? What's going on? And I was like, oh, I forgot to tell you, I applied for the show called Making the Cut on Amazon. I was like, potentially I may not be here for a few months.
Oh my
And she was like,
gosh.
wait, what? You're going on a show? And I was like, yeah, like they just emailed me.
That is hilarious.
And so I remember the email was like, give them a call. And so I ended up calling them like while I was at work. And they were like, congratulations, you made it to the next round. You want to set up a Zoom,
Oh my
blah, blah, blah.
goodness.
And so yeah, I made it to the next round. Keep in mind when you apply for like reality TV shows, the casting like process is very like rigorous. And so it's not just a like, oh, you made it. It's like, oh, you made it. But like I had to go through like several rounds of like cuts basically to make it to top 10. And what confirmed it for me after all of these meetings, I remember they told me that they were sending me a camera. And so when I got the camera, the bag had my name on it, but it had the letter F. And I was like, F, like, okay. And so in my mind, I'm like, okay, A, B, C, D, E, F. And I was like, oh, I'm number 6. Like, I'm in the cut. Like, they're not going to send me a bag
Your
labeled F.
logic.
Like, no, like, literally. And I remember, like, telling my mom this, and she was, like, looking at me like, you're crazy. And I was like, no, like, if they send me a bag and it has an F on it, I'm number 6. They went down the list and each person's name was next to a
You're
letter, and it was like A, B,
smart.
C, D, E, F, G, H, I. You get what I'm saying? Like, and they were in 10
Yeah.
spots.
I would
So
never
if
think
the
about
letter is
this.
F, like, I made the cut. Like, there's no question about it. So my faith was like up here. I was like, nope, I made the cut. I made the
Yeah.
cut. And I remember like telling my mom and grandma, and they're like, girl, that doesn't, you don't know if that was that, you don't know if that's what that means. And I was like, well, I'm believing I made top 10. And so I'm just like share a little testimony with you. I was at work one day and I had a meeting with the casting directors of Amazon and also Making the Cut. And so I told my supervisor, I was like, hey, I got to take my lunch. So usually on my lunch break, she didn't know this, but I would run to the office and like pack orders and do things. And so I was going to take my meeting on my lunch break and run to the office and take it. And so when I went to the office to take that Zoom, I remember sitting in front of the computer and I had to use the restroom. So I was like, let me go run and like pee really quick. So I went to the restroom and I was walking into a bathroom stall, and here comes Megan from Making the Cut season 2 walking out. And I was like, hey, Megan, like, oh my God, like, you're on season 2. Like, and she's like, hey, how are you? And I was like, this is so crazy. Like, I have a meeting in like 4 minutes with the casting director. I applied for season 3. And she's like, oh my gosh, good luck. Like, let me know if you need anything and all of these things. She's like, take my number down. Let me know if you have any questions. Like, I would love to, like, if you need anything, just let me know. And I was like, okay, cool. So after I used it, I
What a
ran back to the office,
serendipitous moment, though, that you would run into
right?
someone who was also on the show. So Megan from Making the Cut
Exactly.
actually used to work out of the office building that we did too. So that's how that moment happened. But
Right.
it's just crazy that it happened in that exact moment before you're going to have
And
your
we didn't
interview.
know that. Yeah, like at the time, I didn't even know that Megan like worked. Like that was when I figured it out. She was like, "Yeah, like my office is right there," and I was like, "What? Your office is right there? My office is right here." And so
Yeah.
like this whole time, like Megan is like down the hall. Like she's on season 2. I'm applying for season 3. Like I just thought that was crazy.
Yeah.
And so when I got back to the computer and I was getting ready to get on the Zoom for the meeting, I had like a little second to myself, and I just like heard God speak to me, and He was like, "You made it."
Mm.
And so when I got on the call, they were like, "Congratulations, you made top 10." And I just started like crying. And I was like, "Oh my God, that's why I ran into Megan. That was a conversation."
Yes, that's so amazing. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So tell me what your experience was like on that show, just being a designer and, stepping into this like new realm on TV and that pressure. Like, what was that like?
Yeah. I mean, I will tell you, I thought I was prepared. I was not. I was not prepared in so many ways. In so many ways, I was not prepared. I got prepared when I was there, but I think it like kind of caught up to me. And what really, I think, played a role in my lack of success, I will say, on the show was the fact that I had mentally allowed fear to step into my space. And so I'm seeing all of these other designers in the workroom, and I'm like, wow, they are so talented. And then I'm staring at my work and I'm like, I just don't feel,
Mm,
that I am on that same level. And I had to have a talk with myself, and I was like, well, if you weren't on that same level, you wouldn't be in this room. You know what I
yeah.
mean? And so I think that I was really trying to make sure I solidified my confidence in like what my aesthetic was, who I was as a designer, and I felt like I needed a little bit more work to do.
Mm.
Not to say like, of course I'm talented, but I remember like Heidi Klum asking me this question on like while we were recording, and she was like, "Do you feel like you're ready to be here?" And of course I confidently said yes. But inside I was like, I think that I'm still working on, myself as a designer.
Hmm.
Not that I didn't deserve to be there, but I think, mentally, like you have to be very confident in who you are and who you're building yourself to be and who you're building your business and your brand to be. And I think I had a little bit more work to do in that season.
Yeah.
But I will say, like, the cameras in my face, that also affected me because, I was very self-conscious of like, oh my gosh, I hope I don't say the wrong thing. I hope
Mm.
I don't do the wrong thing. Do I look okay? And like focusing on all of those things while trying to create and win $1 million.
Yeah. Yeah. No
It
pressure.
like no pressure, no pressure. Just a million, just a little million. Nothing too crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was just like looking at all the competition, thinking about the $1 million, thinking about opening a store, but also thinking about my image, like how am I portraying myself on
Mm.
camera, like, all of these things were kind of like messing with my mind, and I didn't realize like how much it was affecting me, like having those cameras in my face all the time, because I had never like been in that capacity before, like creating, but also trying to show the world who I am. Like I'm so used to like working in a confined space. Like maybe you're the only person who have seen me like in a workspace besides like my cutter and my sewer. You know what I mean? So like there's all these people in the room, all these producers, all these directors, all of these like just so many people behind the scenes when you are on a reality TV show. And then on top of that, they have an agenda. They're trying to push a storyline, and you're trying to figure out, do I fit into the storyline? Do I want to, step out of the storyline? And then everything's just happening all at the same time. And so it's a very like fast paced thing. And you got to think like even designing and like 4 hours, 6 hours. Like that's a fast turnaround. And so you have to move quickly. And another thing was, you know, I didn't feel like I was making decisions quick enough. Like I'm a really slow thinker. Like I like to sit on things
Mm-hmm.
and make decisions based off of like, oh, okay, like let me edit that down. Like, you know, maybe let me switch that. But I take my time to make decisions. And what I realized was you have to move quickly. Like you have to move fast.
Yeah.
And so overall it was an amazing experience though. I will say I learned a lot from the other designers and I really learned a lot for myself as well.
Yeah, that's so amazing. And I think it's just like such a good opportunity too for, it's a lot of pressure, obviously, and it was an experience and a learning lesson. But I feel like it's also great for you, for exposure, for your brand, for your name, even if, you didn't make it all the way to the end. So I'm kind of curious, like, what other opportunities came out of that, or what happened after being on Making the Cut?
Yeah, so making the cut definitely opened a lot of doors for me. It gave me the opportunity to be on the Tamron Hall show for her up and coming designer series. You know, Disney had reached out. They ended up flying me to New York and I got to go to the ABC studios in New York for the first time.
Wow, I
I
didn't
had
know
a really
that.
good yeah, so technically ABC is owned by Disney. So Disney was actually the company that flew me to New York.
Okay.
You know, they, paid for my driver and my hotel and all of that good stuff. And then when I got there, I was amongst like I think it was three other designers. Yeah, it was total four of us, I believe. And, they interviewed us and just that was like my first like television interview, I guess you could say, which was an amazing experience.
Yeah.
Um, it was really a full circle moment for me too, because I feel like every time I'm in New York, I think back to 2017 when I went to the manufacturer and designed my first collection.
Mm-hmm.
So like every time I go to New York, it's for business. It's for Ciara Cheyenne.
Mm-hmm.
Just like this previous September, like going to New York Fashion Week. That's another door that got opened with the Black and Fashion Council showroom. I was able to present my new collection to buyers and editors and stylists and all types of people. I got to develop a lot of new relationships, and so making the cut has definitely allowed a little bit of credibility behind my name, I would say.
Yeah.
And it got me opportunities for other stylists to work with me for their clients, celebrity clients. And so yeah, making the cut has done like a lot. It really has.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I think you've done so well at like leveraging the power of media to market your brand and to get your name out there. And not only in the realm of like getting that TV exposure and getting yourself out there like that, but also through PR, right? So we've seen your brand on everyone.
Well, actually, it's thanks to you, Jasmine, because you're the person who taught me how to leverage that press. You're the person.
How? Dang, I don't
I
even
really do.
remember.
So, Jasmine, you get pointers and you give advice, and you don't even know. Like, you're the one, the machine behind it all.
You know why? Because I don't take my own advice. That's why I'm like, wait, what? How'd you do?
Yeah, like I think you consulted me through that one time. You were like, this is what you have to do. You're like, you take one press and you stretch it and you get another you get some more press and then you stretch it and then you get some more press. And I was like, oh, I see what you're doing there, Jasmine. I see what you're doing. So what I would do is I would talk myself up. I would like, well, I was on Making the Cut
Yeah.
and I was on Tamron Hall.
Mm-hmm.
So I deserve to be at Fashion Week.
Yeah.
So it's like you use all these things. I was featured in Essence magazine.
Yeah.
Like my work is in Essence magazine.
Yeah.
My work is on, daytime talk shows. I'm in music videos. Like I am in like all types of things. So I use that to leverage. And yes, that's the key to getting more press. Use your press, stretch it, and get more press.
Yeah, and what she means by stretching it is like you show that off, in business you can't always be super humble. You kind of have to display these things because it's really the industry is really like a popularity contest. So it's like if one piece of media sees that you've been featured by another, then they want to feature you too. Everyone wants to get on the bandwagon of like what's hot. And so when, you talk about stretching it, it's like you're really exposing what features you got. so that more people are like, oh, she's hot right now. Let's feature her too. So
Right.
yeah, it's a great strategy. So Ciara, your brand has been worn by so many celebs. We have Cheryl Lee Ralph, Quinta Brunson from Abbott Elementary, Elaine Wolteroff, who was the editor of was she Vogue editor?
Teen Vogue.
Teen
Teen
Vogue
Vogue, yeah.
editor, Lauren London, like the list goes on. You have been featured by so many celebrities. And a lot of that is due to your brand being represented by a PR showroom. And so I want you to talk about a little bit about that and what the process was of like getting your brand into a PR showroom and how that can help brands get that exposure.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am so for PR showrooms. I think it's very important. It's very significant in building your brand because you want to develop relationships with people in the industry. And for me, I had to vet out a PR showroom that fit my brand best. Some people just join PR showrooms just because, but I took time to like do research. And, it actually was like a referral from another friend who's a designer. But I had a few meetings with a few different PR showrooms, and I felt that Etc. LA, ETC Los Angeles, that's the name of my PR showroom, was the best fit for me because the owner Jade, I think she's amazing. She's wonderful. I think she really like goes to bat for her designers. She really puts in a lot of work in like pushing the brand and the collections and like reaching out to stylists for red carpet events or whether it's like editorials or whatever it may be. And one thing that she said to me when I had a meeting with her is that she really believed in my brand. And usually when I have meetings with people, when I hear people say that, like, oh, I believe in your brand, I have to like really pray about it because I'm like, are they just saying that because they want to take my money or do
Yeah.
they really believe in my brand?
Yeah, yeah.
Because like at the end of the day, like that's just business. People are gonna tell you what you want to hear. But I didn't feel that. I felt authenticity from her. And I was like, oh, like
Mm,
I think she really believes in my brand. And she was telling me like she could do so much for me. And to be honest, within the first month, like she was like, hey, like I just want to let you know this. I have never had so many pulls for a designer in the first month like you before. She was like, there were so many
wow.
pulls from stylists, like they loved my collection. And she was telling me that, none of the other designers that she represented in the showroom had ever gotten that much pulls in the first month. And so
Mm.
that's when I knew I had something. I was like, okay, cool. I think I saw one of my dresses on Liza Koshy on Good Morning America. And I
Yeah.
remember like watching it live and I was like, oh my gosh, like my dress is on TV. And I was like, wow, like, okay, Jade is really doing something. So the PR showroom has definitely opened up doors. And I think, allowing like the imagery, the photos that I receive from clients wearing my pieces has allowed me to like build my portfolio, allowed me to build my social media presence. And ultimately, people look at your social media like for credibility, I guess you can say.
Yeah.
Um,
No, I also wanted to just touch on for people who don't know how a PR showroom works. PR stands for public relations, and how it works is that stylists come in, right? And stylists will come in and pull from different designers that are represented by the showroom and then put it on their celebrity clients. And so, yeah, it's a great way to market your collection. And I'm sure you've gotten tons of exposure from people seeing these celebs in your designs and wanting to get a piece of your brand as well.
yes, I think that PR really helps you get that extra push. But what
Yeah.
I realized is that that's just like one component that's making the wheel go around. And in business and building a fashion brand, I think it's really important to have like all of these different like marketing tactics going at once because when you just focus on one, you could have a lot of highs and lows. But I think that you have to like put like money into advertisement,
Mm.
you have to do like rollout marketing, you have to be in a PR showroom, you have to like really be intentional with that press, you have to like reach out to influencers, you have to like do all of these things and like they all work together. So that's one thing that I have learned being in the PR showroom. It's like having that supply to back up that demand.
Yeah. Great advice. So, one thing that we're all about here at Make Good Fashion is creating fashion with purpose, having purpose driven ideas and concepts. And so, I want to know how your values play a part in your brand, in the Ciara Cheyenne brand.
Well, my values play a part in the Sierra Cheyenne brand on a couple different levels. So first, I would just say that I think you have to like really be confident in knowing who you are as a designer, because there's going to be a lot of opportunities that present itself to you, and you have to be okay with saying no sometimes. I know everyone's bad press. It doesn't matter. It's press. You know what I mean? But there's been like certain situations where like I've been presented opportunities and I'm like, well, that doesn't really align with my beliefs and my morals and my values. So I'm gonna have to pass up on that opportunity. And I would say like maybe 85% of people, 90% of people would take a lot of those opportunities. But sometimes I have to really sit and like think about longevity in this business, and because I'm not like a brand that's just like trying to make money or just trying to be cool, and like I see myself 30, 40 years from now still having this business and building this lifestyle brand, I really have to think like strategically on like, is this the right move for me right now at this time?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think that's like really important, is like thinking about like your long-term goals. Like we have short-term goals, but we also have long-term goals. And like once you really sit down and like figure out what those are, then you'll know like, hey, like this doesn't really align with my brand. And most importantly, I think like my faith is something that I really focus on. Like I have to make sure like this is sit right with my spirit.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes like I have to, pray about things. Like, everyone is not like faith based, but I understand that like you have to have some type of moral compass. And for me, like that's the Holy Spirit. So
Yeah,
like when I'm
amen.
moving throughout my day, like I have to like pray about things and be like, so just recently, I'll give you an example. There was an opportunity presented to me to have like a business development service for 6 months. And so the investment is $5,000. And $5,000 is not really a lot of money, but it is a lot of money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I had to sit there and be like, okay, so do I want to drop this 5K right now? But I had to figure out like, is this going to elevate me? Is this going to take me to the next level? But also, like, I had to ask God, like, hey, is this something that I should be doing? Because sometimes we move on our own understanding, and then like we're wondering why things aren't working, and it's because we're
Yeah,
not checking in.
that's so
We're
good.
not checking in to see like, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? And granted, God will always give us grace, but I want to make sure I'm not wasting no time.
Yes.
No time and no money. So that's most
Facts.
important for me.
I love it. So, Ciara, tell me, what advice would you give aspiring designers who like want to be where you are, want to, make some kind of impact on this industry?
Yeah, so a friend of mine like wrote this book called Dear Designer.
And if
And
you're
so I
watching on
wrote,
YouTube, she has the book. So make sure you hop on
yes,
YouTube so you can
Dear
see what it
Designer.
looks like.
And I wrote in here like a few lessons I wish someone taught me. So the first one is, it's okay to rob Peter to pay Paul. No one told me this. Like, this is like a life skill in business. It's okay to, invest in yourself, and you might have to take out a business loan. I haven't taken out any business loans. I am completely bootstrapping, but it's okay if you need to. It's okay if you have to, I've reached into my 401k. I've done certain things like that before because I believe so much in my business and my brand. So if you have to strategize like financially on how you're going to come up with the capital to do what you need to do, it's okay to rob Peter to pay Paul.
But
Now,
disclaimer, make sure that you have proof
okay.
of concept and you take a calculated risk.
Oh, right. That's most important.
Make sure you vet your brand
Okay.
idea. Don't be robbing Peter to pay Paul when you don't know if this business is going to work or you don't believe in it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No. So the numbers, the math got to math.
The
Like the
math
math,
has to math.
if the get your numbers together and then make sure that the business is going to generate income, because if it's not, you're going to be in debt and it doesn't make sense.
Exactly.
So another one is stay ready so you don't have to get ready. Like I just think that's just a business rule. Like don't try to scramble and get things together when opportunities come. Like you need to always be ready. Like your business plan needs to be ready. All of those things need to be ready and in place. You might have an investor reach out to you one day and it just doesn't make sense if you don't have the plan in place. Like what are they investing in?
Yep.
I usually say yes first and figure it out later.
That's
Now,
mine.
yeah, I mean, it kind of depends. Like if you're not a reliable person, I wouldn't tell you to do this. But if you're a reliable person, like I am, I'm gonna say yes, and then I'm gonna figure out how to do it later.
Yeah.
Because you know what I mean? Like
That
that's
one's
how we're
good
gonna
because I think
progress from there.
a lot of people hesitate, and because they feel like, oh, I don't have all the things in place, blah blah blah. So they miss out on opportunities that are right in front of them. And my philosophy is the same thing. Like if the opportunity presents itself and it's too good to pass up, I don't need to know how it's all going to work out. I'm going to say yes because it's something that's once in a lifetime, and then we figure it out later. So yes, I'm all for
Right.
that.
Yeah, I mean, like you just have to have a figure it out mentality. Like this
Mhm.
industry is just about figuring it out. Like just figure it out. And then another one is like don't procrastinate. That is probably the number one fault of myself. Is like procrastination has definitely got me out of some situations that, well, let me rephrase that. Procrastination has allowed me to miss opportunities. And
Hmm.
so responding to emails slowly, thinking you
Yeah.
have all day, there's someone else sitting and waiting for that opportunity. And they're
Yeah.
going to give it to that person who moves swiftly. So don't procrastinate. Use the 5 second rule. And I go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And if you don't do it in those 5 seconds, then you're not
I'm
meant to
using
be
that
there.
after this because I do be waiting days and days to answer emails sometimes.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah, and
good.
I'm wondering why I didn't get selected. It's because I
Right,
responded
right.
48 hours later. Like, you know what I mean? Like, girl, you took a whole 2 days to write back. Like, they moved on and chose someone else.
Right.
Content is queen. I know people say content is king, but content is queen because we're queens over here. Like, content is so, so important. And I can't stress that enough. We see that with the algorithm today. Face it till you make it. That's like my
Mm,
life quote I live by. Some people say fake it till you make it. Mine is faith it till you make it. So stepping out on faith, like at all times, like you just
yes.
gotta put one foot in front of the other, and the other will follow.
And that's kind of like your other
Um,
point of like just saying yes and figuring it out later is like kind
mhm,
of similar. Like we're gonna step on faith and like trust that God's gonna direct us and all of that. So I love that.
right. Wear your own clothes. Wear your own clothes. You see this turtleneck here? This is Ciara Cheyenne.
That's a
Don't know who
Ciara
that is?
Cheyenne original.
Wear your own clothes. You know why? Because the more compliments you get when you're wearing your clothes, oh my God, I love that top. Thank you. I designed it. You have to practice that.
Yeah. And some of us can be so like, you know, timid or like, you don't want again, sometimes this business requires like a lack of humility. And I
Mhm.
there's probably a better way to say that, but you have to be okay with like talking about your things and showing it off and all of that. So that's some great
Yeah.
advice.
I mean, till this day, sometimes people compliment me and I just say thank you and keep walking and don't tell them that I designed it. And so, like, I think you just have to get like used to it. And so I practice it a lot, but there are times like I'll just say thank you and walk off. And then,
Mhm.
like, if I'm with someone, they're like, why didn't you tell them that you're a designer and you made
Mhm.
it and give them a
Yeah.
business card or tell them to follow
So
your
guilty
Instagram? And
of
I'm just like,
that.
yeah, not today. But like, you really do have to get in the habit of practicing that because you'll miss out on so many customers. Like,
Yeah.
you won't believe it.
And you're your
Um,
own walking billboard.
yeah, for sure, for sure. So I live by this as well. This quote, you're one more no away from a yes.
Mm.
So don't let a no like bring you down because you never know around the corner may be a yes and that opportunity may be greater for you than that no.
Yes.
And when people tell you no, this is another thing I do. I just have to find the right person who's going to say yes. Like sometimes you're just not talking to the right person. And you shouldn't allow like someone telling you no to define if that thing is going to happen. Like
Yes.
sometimes I hear no and I'm just like, okay, well, it's a no from you. But tomorrow I'm going to try again and I'm going to go ask someone else. But I'm going to get what I want because I know what I'm capable of and I know it's possible. So if the possibilities are endless, like I shouldn't stop at that one no. So
Yeah.
that's like one that I live by.
Yeah, I want to touch on that
Um,
because I feel like, in this industry, you really have to have perseverance. If you're starting a fashion brand, you have to have that perseverance. You have to understand that it's a marathon and not a sprint. And at any moment, like any second, something can happen and an opportunity can present itself. And I think a lot of people end up quitting prematurely because they're not seeing the fruit of what they're building. They're not seeing opportunities come up and they feel like everyone else is getting the opportunities, right? And sometimes you're quitting prematurely and right around the corner. Maybe the next day something would have came up or like, a little bit more down the line. And so, you have to just keep on keeping on, keep on trying. And that's in everything, whether you're like applying for grants or you are trying to get featured or you are trying to just make the first couple of sales. You have to really keep going, keep improving, and persevere because you never know when that opportunity is going to come. And I think that's one thing about you, Ciara, too, is that you have great perseverance and you keep going and opportunities continue to show up for you. And I think because you just have that, stick to itiveness.
yeah, being tenacious, being like having that tenacity will really get you indoors. I think just really having that attitude of knowing like, I'm not going to stop until I get to where I want to go will allow you to continue to like grow in that aspect.
Yeah. And really
Um,
believing in the product, too. Because if you don't believe in the product, then you can't expect other people to.
right. And there's two more. Okay, so I'm gonna make this quick. Stop seeking validation. That was a
Mm,
huge one for me. We really need to stop seeking validation from people because the only validation that matters is from yourself and from the one who created us.
that's
We do
good.
not have to prove anything to the world at all. And that is something that has put me into fear is like, oh my gosh, they don't like this. Oh my gosh, let me change this so that they can approve this.
Mhm.
Do what makes you feel great. Do what brings you joy. What brings you peace? What brings you happiness as a creative? Like that is what it's important. So stop seeking validation from people in the industry.
Yeah, and a little note to that too. I think that's great. I I think validation amongst our peers too, because we can think like, oh, what do they think about it? But I think you also like, do what brings you joy and what you feel good about, but also with the customer in mind too. And you should know, have an understanding of your customer of like, okay, I know my customers what their needs are and I know them really well. And so I can feel confident in what I'm putting out. And then not just, well, I love it. No one else that I'm making it for loves it. So I think that's something good to keep in mind too is like know your customer as you create those things, but don't seek validation from like peers and everyone else. Do what you know to be true for you and what works well for your brand DNA.
Right. And lastly, whatever you believe, you receive according to God's will.
Yeah,
So
I was going to say.
I had to according to God's will. But I'm saying this because there are so many times that I believe in manifesting, right? So there's times that I think about what I want and then I believe in my heart that it's going to happen and then I do the work to make it happen. I
Mhm.
pray about it and then I put it in God's hands. Now, if he wants it to happen, it's going to happen. But I did all I can do. I believed it in my heart. I saw it in my vision and then I put in the work and then I created it.
Yeah.
And a lot of times in my business, things have happened because I went through that process. I envisioned it, I believed it, and then I put in the work and it happened. There's been times where I'm like, oh my gosh, I want Lotto, the rapper Lotto. I can, like, I think I was sitting watching YouTube videos all night of her music. And I was like, I would really love to see her in my brand. Do you know 2 days later, I saw her on a cover of a magazine wearing my skirt.
Oh my
And I think for
gosh.
me, like, that was like literally a confirmation. I was like, I sat there that night and envisioned her wearing my pieces. I have no idea how it happened. No idea. Out of all the
Wow.
people in the world, 2 days later, I saw Lotto on Instagram and it was a video posted of her at a magazine cover shoot, and she's wearing my piece. And I was like, that is mind blowing to me that that happened.
Literally.
Like literally mind blowing. So
That's
definitely
amazing.
put in the work, put in the work and produce. You have to produce. You can sit up and sketch all day, come up with mood boards, create on Canva and do all these things. But if you're not producing and putting things out and bringing them to fruition and taking those ideas from paper to an actual sample or an actual, actual line, it doesn't matter because you're not
Yeah.
producing. So don't let all those ideas sit in a book somewhere. Like
Hmm.
actually open the book and figure out how to bring it to life. So those are my little nuggets for
Yes.
all the emerging designers.
I love that. Amazing. I feel like I just went to a master class. So thank you so much, Ciara. Like we have to have you on another podcast episode because I feel like there's like 1,000 things that we can talk about from our journey in this industry. And so I would
Right.
love to have you back. But how can people get connected with the Ciara Cheyenne brand? How can we find you?
Yeah, I would love for you guys to follow me. Well, first of all, my website is www.ciara, Ciara, Cheyenne, Chyanne.com. And it's the same on Instagram, Ciara Cheyenne, CIARA CHYANNE _. And you guys can follow me for any new products, sign up for our email list. We have email blasts going out so you can, be in all the news, and look forward to us being in retail stores very, very soon.
Yes, love it. Well, thank you so much, Sierra, for being on. It's been so fun catching up with you and like reminiscing on all these fun stories. So, thank you
We
for
have
being on the
stories for
podcast.
days.
Yes, yes, so many
Thank you so much
stories.
for having me. Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate you. And I'm excited to see what's next for Make Good Fashion.
Hey. All right, Sierra, have a good one.
Bye.